There's a pattern that has destroyed every revolutionary government in history. Not foreign invasion, not economic depression, not natural disaster, but a predictable sequence of social and political decay. And it happens the exact same way every single time. France, the cultural capital of the Western world, collapsed into a reign of terror when this sequence played out. Russia, a sprawling empire of unimaginable resources, descended into a brutal civil war and a century of totalitarianism. Cuba, an island nation on the verge of prosperity, was plunged into a 60-year dictatorship that continues to this day. 3 times in the modern era, a seemingly stable government has followed this exact pattern. Extreme inequality, government corruption, a radicalized middle class, loss of faith in institutions, the formation of revolutionary movements, and finally, a catastrophic collapse. And every time, the people in power believed they were different, that their nation was special, that the old rules didn't apply to them. They were wrong every single time. And right now, in the 21st century, the United States is following that exact same pattern step by step, warning sign by warning sign. The only question is whether we're near the beginning, the middle, or the end. This is the story of how nations destroy themselves from within. How it happened to France, Russia, and Cuba, and why every warning sign says it's happening again. Let's start with stage 1, extreme wealth inequality. This isn't just about some people being richer than others. It's about a chasm so vast that society splits into 2 separate, irreconcilable realities. On the eve of its revolution in 1789, the top 1% in France controlled about 20% of the nation's wealth, a concentration that the common people found intolerable. Today, in the United States, the situation is far more extreme. The top 1% of Americans now control a staggering 32% of the country's wealth. The gap has become an abyss. Consider this. Just 130,000 households, a group that could fit inside a single large football stadium, now own more wealth than the bottom 117 million American households combined. This isn't a statistical anomaly. It's a structural feature of the modern economy. It creates a permanent aristocracy, a class of people so insulated by their wealth that the daily struggles of ordinary citizens become completely abstract to them. While millions worry about eviction, medical bills, or the rising cost of groceries, a tiny elite operates in a different universe, their fortunes multiplying effortlessly through investments and assets. This level of disparity breeds resentment that simmers just below the surface of society, a powder keg of social tension waiting for a spark. When the majority of the population feels the system is rigged to benefit a select few, the social contract begins to fray, leading directly to the next stage. Stage 2 is government corruption. When wealth becomes this concentrated, it inevitably seizes control of the political system. The government stops representing the people and starts serving its wealthy patrons. In the United States, faith in the integrity of its governing bodies has cratered. Public trust in Congress currently sits at a dismal 15%. This isn't baseless paranoia. It's a rational response to observable facts. Members of Congress, who are supposed to be public servants, are routinely caught engaging in what can only be described as insider trading, using classified information from committee briefings to make personal stock market trades that net them millions. It's a practice that would land any normal citizen in prison, yet for the political class, it's business as usual. The laws themselves are no longer written by elected representatives but are ghost-written by corporate lobbyists who pour billions into political campaigns to ensure legislation favors their industries, not the public good. This corruption is a bipartisan disease. Voters on both the left and the right increasingly see the entire system as a charade, a game played by 2 wings of the same corrupt establishment. All the while, the national debt has ballooned to an incomprehensible $36 trillion, a sum accrued with zero accountability from the very people who spent it. When the government is perceived as nothing more than a tool for the rich and powerful to enrich themselves, the people's loyalty to that government evaporates. This toxic combination of inequality and corruption then creates the catalyst for stage 3. Stage 3 is the radicalization of the middle class. This is the critical turning point. Revolutions are not typically started by the poorest of the poor, but by the educated and the ambitious who find their paths to a better life systematically blocked. In America, the dream that defined generations, that hard work and a good education would lead to a stable, prosperous life, is dying. A college degree, once a reliable ticket to the middle class, is now a crushing burden of debt, with tuition costs having spiraled into the stratosphere. Housing, the cornerstone of family wealth and stability, has become fundamentally unaffordable for millions, with home prices and rents completely disconnected from average wages. The result is a generation of educated, skilled professionals, doctors, lawyers, engineers, teachers, who find themselves unable to achieve the same standard of living their parents took for granted. They followed the rules, they worked hard, and the system they were told to believe in has failed them. This betrayal doesn't just create disappointment, it creates a deep and abiding anger. They see a system of legalized corruption and rampant inequality, and they conclude rationally that the game is rigged. It's this group, articulate, organized, and motivated by a profound sense of injustice, that provides the intellectual and organizational leadership for the revolutionary movements that are to come. Their disillusionment poisons the well of social cohesion, leading us to where the United States is right now. We are now in stage 4, a catastrophic loss of faith in institutions. A society cannot function without a shared reality, a common trust in the core pillars that hold it together. In the United States, that foundation has crumbled. Trust in the media, the supposed watchdog of the public interest, has completely collapsed. A majority of Americans now believe news organizations intentionally mislead, misinform, or actively persuade the public. Trust in law enforcement is starkly divided along political and racial lines, with huge segments of the population viewing the police not as protectors, but as agents of an unjust system. Most dangerously, faith in the bedrock of democracy itself, the electoral process, is shattered. Nearly half the country believes the 2020 election was stolen, a belief held with religious conviction. The other half believes the protest on January 6th was an attempted coup d'etat, an insurrection aimed at overthrowing the government. There is no middle ground, no shared set of facts, no common reality from which to debate or compromise. When one side sees a stolen election and the other sees an insurrection, the very possibility of a peaceful political process dies. The nation has fractured into two warring tribes, each with its own media, its own facts, and its own truth. This is the point of no return. Once a nation loses its shared reality, it can no longer solve its problems through debate or legislation. The only tools left are coercion and force, which sets the stage for the next, more dangerous phase. Stage 5 is the formation of revolutionary movements. When people lose all faith in the existing system's ability to reform itself, they begin to seek solutions outside of it. The political center implodes. On the left, a powerful movement is growing that rejects capitalism itself. It pushes for radical wealth redistribution, the nationalization of industries, and a form of socialism that would fundamentally transform the American economic and political order. They see the system as irredeemably exploitative and believe it must be dismantled, not reformed. On the right, a different but equally revolutionary movement is gaining momentum. It embraces a form of authoritarian nationalism, viewing the existing democratic norms and institutions as weak, corrupt, and traitorous. They are increasingly willing to discard constitutional constraints in favor of a strong leader who can purge the system of its enemies and restore a lost national greatness. Both extremes, left and right, are united by one core belief. The system is broken beyond repair and cannot be fixed through conventional politics. They are no longer simply political opponents. They see each other as existential threats. As these movements gain mass support, they pull the entire country apart, making a violent confrontation seem not just possible, but inevitable. This leads to stage 6, the precipice of collapse. What breaks the nation is not one single event, but a rapid escalation of chaos that overwhelms the state's capacity to maintain order. Political violence, once confined to the fringes, becomes commonplace. Protests are no longer peaceful expressions of dissent, but turn into street battles between armed factions. The institutions that are supposed to hold the line begin to fracture under the immense political pressure. The military and police forces, comprised of citizens from the same divided society, see their loyalties split. Some units may refuse orders they deem illegitimate, while others might actively side with one political faction over another. The economic backbone of the country, its complex and fragile supply chains, begins to fail. Shortages of food, fuel, and medicine appear, first sporadically, then becoming chronic, creating widespread panic and hoarding. In a federal system like the United States, this crisis could manifest as states openly defying federal authority. Governors might refuse to enforce federal laws or even use their own National Guard units to resist federal agents, creating a constitutional crisis that borders on civil war. The chaos is not a single telegraphed event. It's a death by 1,000 cuts. And history shows us this period of disintegration doesn't last for months. It can last for years, a grinding, terrifying breakdown of civilization itself. When the dust finally settles, the outcome is never what the revolutionaries promised. This is the great, tragic lesson of history. Stage 7 is always terror. The idealists who dreamed of liberty, equality, and justice are inevitably pushed aside by the ruthless and the organized, those who are most willing to use violence to achieve their goals. In France, the revolution that began with the Declaration of the Rights of Man devolved into the Reign of Terror, a paranoid bloodbath where 40,000 people were publicly executed by the guillotine in organized purges. In Russia, the promise of peace, land, and bread was followed by a horrific civil war that killed 10 million people, succeeded by Stalin's totalitarian regime that murdered millions more. In Cuba, the revolution to overthrow a corrupt dictator simply installed another one, leading to a 60-year communist dictatorship, firing squads, and the exodus of over 1 million refugees. The dream of a utopian future always ends in a dystopian nightmare. Revolutions devour their own children and empower the most brutal among them. They do not deliver freedom. They deliver a more efficient and all-encompassing form of tyranny. The power vacuum created by the collapse of the old order is always filled by something far worse. The pattern is unbroken, and the United States is walking the same path, believing it is the exception. It never is.